Good morning. You bang on time for Leadership Forum here on AM Live. And of course, you know it when we are here on Friday, we discuss issues to do with leadership. And today, we turn our focus on the future of media here in the country. Our panelists are already in studio with us, and they will be taking us through, of course, what is the landscape of the Kenyan media and where are we headed as far as the future is concerned. Allow me to introduce to you, this is Engineer Francis Wangusi, who is the Director General of the Media Council of Kenya. Also, we do have with us as well David Omyoyo, who is the CEO of the Media Council of Kenya. We have as well Dr. Wilfred Rube, who is the President of the PRSK. And we're eagerly waiting also for other panelists to join us. This is Dr. Ezekiel Mutua and also Marceline Nyabala, this Executive Director of Amwick. So, you know the drill. Head over to our Twitter handle, which is AM Live NTV. AM Live NTV is our profile name on Facebook, and 20686, our SMS portal. So what is the future of the Kenyan media? Is the quality of journalism really going down the tubes? That is a probing question. And since we migrated, of course, to the digital platform, how has the landscape been, right? Has it increased the quality of journalism, the quality of programming? Where are we headed? When it comes to moral decadence, is the media also spewing a lot of that? Or what is agreed? What is a regulatory framework under which we are working on? So these are probing questions we want to throw to our panelists this morning. And I also allow you to drive a show with me, of course, through the social media platform where you can actually pepper them with some of your questions. Also, if you have contribution, that will be a good platform for you as well to chime in and contribute to this discussion. So we look forward to you engaging with us as well as we eagerly wait for other panelists to join us this morning. But before we do that, we look at the good, the bad, and the ugly in our dailies this morning. Beginning with the Daily Nation. This is what is a splash today that you're waking up to. Ready or not, here it comes. You have 48 hours to withdraw bet money. That is what we have on the front page of the Daily Nation today. 200 billion shillings, or 200 billion shillings a year industry faces an uncertain future as licenses blocked. Government gives gamblers 2 days to withdraw cash from betting wallets or lose it, it says. Commercial banks and communication authority enjoined in renewed move against betting firms. Also, firms protest. Shock move to shut them down. They say they have complied with all statutory regulations. Stories and commentary on page 4 and 5 of the Daily Nation today. Now Mudhara backs power sharing deals. This is another story on page 6 of today's Daily Nation. Former head of civil service in Kibaki administration falls current winner, takes all political arrangement, and you have all tucked away on page 6 of today's Daily Nation. Prison break, hardcore criminals on the run is another story that you can follow inside today's Daily Nation. And 19 is a figure given here, the number of suspected criminals who escaped while being transported to industrial area prison on July the 5th. 2 were recaptured. There is a stalemate back and forth between the National Police Service and the Prisons Department, raising questions on who has authority over suspects who have not been convicted. All that also, you can follow it inside the Daily Nation today. Also today, remember, you have the Network Pull-Out magazine, and every Friday it comes tucked away or tucked inside the Daily Nation. Blazer ideas for blazing hot people. Find all that also inside the copy of the Daily Nation today. Let's look on what we have on the front page of the Standard, and this is what you're waking up to on the front page of the Standard this morning. Court strikes big blow to graft war. No more surprises. In a decision likely to affect future investigations, Court of Appeal rules that detectives cannot access bank accounts details or raid suspects' residences without informing them first. This story continues on page 4 of the Standard today. Also, rift in government over maize imports. They've been double speaking. Of course, the chairman of NCPB and the CS of Agriculture, Mwangi Kiunjuri. And this is what they're saying. Agriculture Cabinet Secretary Mwangi Kiunjuri accuses Wekesa of insubordination. Right, it's not tripping off my tongue this morning. I need to wake up. of subordination and being used by other forces. Also, we have Strategic Food Reserve Trust Fund Chair Noah Wekesa alleging maize cartels pushing for imports. So this is where they're toing and froing. And of course, we have also these figures given here for you: 1.5 million number of bags consumed in the country each month, 2.8 billion number of bags in national stores yet to be sold to millers, 12.5 million number of bags, Kinjuri says, should be imported, citing shortage. That is also inside the Standard this morning. Also, DPP approves graft charges against Waititu. Government is headed to court. Governor faces charges relating to irregular procurement, fraudulent acquisition of public funds and money laundering. And of course, is gone to court to block the DPP from investigating him. That is a recent report that we have this morning. But all that story is tucked away on page 5 of the Standard this morning. Bishop wife filed for divorce over adultery, parting ways. Cleric claims partner deserted family, but woman says he chased her away and engaged another woman he now plans to wed. He chased her away and engaged another woman he now plans to wed. This story continues on page 3 of today's Standard. Let's see what we have also on the front page of the Star. And this is your splash this morning. Paul Loser should get PM position, says Mudawara. This is all about referendum. They say executive should accommodate many groups. Ex-civil service boss and Uhuru confident argues that having the runner-up in government will ensure stability and cohesion. This story continues on page 6 of today's Star. Also, Treasury will lose 15 billion shillings in betting taxes. The Treasury is likely to lose over 15 billion shillings in tax revenue annually if government persists with its effective closure of Kenyan betting companies. On Wednesday, the Betting Control and Licensing Board sent a letter to telecoms companies instructing them to shut down the pay bill numbers and short codes for 27 betting companies in Kenya. This story continues on page 2 of a Star. Kiambaa Church fire icon Wangui dies at age 76. Elizabeth Wangui Kimunya, one of the oldest survivors of the Kiambaa Church fire in the 2007-2008 post-election violence, will be buried today. Follow the story on page 3 of the Star. Kinjuri Wekesa clash over plan to import maize. That is a story that you can follow on page 10 of the Star this morning. Also, we have a standalone picture, not really a standalone picture here, but a related picture to the splash. And this is a face of former head of public service, Francis Mudaro, before the Building Bridges team in Nairobi yesterday. People Daily is up next, and this is what it is holding for us this morning. Who's fooling who on maize? That is the abiding questions. The abiding question splashed on the front page of the People Daily. Corn game. Kinjuri Wekesa gave conflicting statements on state of strategic grain reserve. The story continues on page 7 of the People Daily today. Also, MPs, you are the ones to blame for our greed. That is, members of the Public Service Commission yesterday, of course, telling Kenyans you are the ones to blame for our greed. You can follow the story on page 4 of the People Daily this morning. Still there. Also, we have final bow for Granny who symbolized Paul violence. 76-year-old Elizabeth Wangui Kimunya set to be buried today in Kiambaa near Eldoret town. You can see her picture. This is the iconic picture of Elizabeth Wangui taken on New Year's Day 2008 at the Kiambaa KAG Church. At the height of the post-election violence, she succumbed to depression-related complications. And this story continues on page 8 of the People Daily this morning. Let's continue and also pick up the Taifa Leo for us. Mudawara ataka serikali ya nusu mkate. That is what we have as a splash this morning. Aliyekuwa mkuu wa utumishi wa umma adai mfumo huo wa utawala utazima fujo baada ya kura. That is a story that is tucked away also on page 2 of Taifa Leo today. Ajuza ashangaza kukiri kuwa na misokoto ya bangi That is a story you can follow on page 2 of Taifa Leo this morning. Let's buckle down to business a bit and see what is on the front page of the Business Daily. This is your splash today. 31.4 billion shillings bad loans trapping KCB and NBK deal is what is hogging the front page of the Business Daily this morning. And it says KCB reveals plans to aggressively pursue defaulters and write off NBK bad debts. The story continues on page 4 of the Business Daily. 100 women businesses in race for funding from G7 countries. 100 women-owned businesses in the East African community stands a chance to secure additional capital to expand their operations and profitability through a new funding challenge launched by Graça Machel, the children and women rights advocate and founder of the Graça Machel Trust, which is partnering with the competition's funders. Follow the story on page 4. You can see a related picture as well. This is on the front page of the Business Daily. State freezes Kimorel dams or dam suppliers' assets is another story you can follow on page 4 of the Business Daily. And on the ticker today, Naikuni KQ to pay ex-PR chief, former Kenya Airways chief executive Titus Naikuni and the airline have been ordered to pay a former communications manager 10 million shillings who was stripped and later sacked for wearing a t-shirt displaying a rival airline that was in the end year's party. That story continues on page 7 of the Business Daily today. Also alarm over food poison levels, food, drinks, medicines and other everyday conveniences that you interact with could be full of chemicals. This is a warning from the UN agency. Follow the story on page 16 and 17 of the Business Daily this morning. Treasury bills stock at 50 billion shillings. Heavy domestic debt maturities have further cut the stock of outstanding treasury bills, which now accounts for 34.2% of total domestic debt compared to 36.7% at the beginning of May. You follow the story on page 19 of the Business Daily this morning. Let's cross over now to Tanzania and pick up the Citizen and look at the splash. This is what we have today. Form 6 best performers reveal how they excelled. You can follow their story on page 2 of the Citizen in Tanzania. Also Kabudi, I was misunderstood on disappeared scribe Azori. Find all that clarification from him on page 2 of the Citizen. Also top 100 mid-sized companies survey launched. And you can see the picture here. That is Bank Managing Director. That is CRDB Bank Managing Director Abdul Majid Nsikela addressing a news conference called to announce the launch of this year's edition of the Top 100 Mid-Sized Companies Survey in Dar es Salaam. Yesterday, he is flanked by KPMG representative Ketan Shah and Mwananchi Communications Limited Managing Director Francis Nanai. The story continues on page 4 of the Citizen in Tanzania. Also, mobile-based lenders pose money laundering risks. This is a story that you want to follow there on page 2. The sum in dollars secured by Branch International in April is 170 million. Follow that on page 2 of the Citizen. Let's see also what we have on the front page of Mwananchi still in Tanzania. And this is what you're waking up to this morning. Ni mapambano matokeo ya kidato cha sita is a splash here. And of course you can see some of the students in a celebratory mood here, carrying one another. And the list also is given here. Shule kumi bora, shule kumi za mwisho. Also kumi bora kwa masomo ya sayansi, kumi bora also wa masomo ya biashara. You can follow the story on page 4 and 5 of Mwananchi. Professor Kabundi afafanua kauli yake kuhusu Azori Rwanda. Follow the story on page 6 of Mwananchi if you're waking up in Tanzania. Let's cross over now to Rwanda and we pick up now the New Times. This is a splash today. Momentum builds up ahead of CHOGM 2020 in Kigali. Foreign Affairs Minister Dr. Richard Sezibera this week reiterated Rwanda's readiness to host the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. That is the CHOGM 2020. He was addressing a meeting of ministers of foreign affairs drawn from across the Commonwealth and an organization of 54 nations, mostly former British colonies. This story is tucked away on page 2 of the New Times if you're waking up in Rwanda. Also, judiciary to launch retrial and anti-corruption portal. You can read all the details on page 5 of the New Times. And MPs urge government to do more to facilitate trade. And you can see French beans being packaged for export at the National Agricultural Export Development Board in Kigali, according to Prime Minister Edward Ngirente. Rwanda registered $105 million trade surplus in informal cross-border trade in 2018. All that is tucked away inside the New Times if you're waking up in Rwanda. Have you picked your copy of the East African lately? If you haven't, today is the last day, and this is what that has been also the splash this morning. I'll try and pick up that again for you. That is not the recent copy. Let me just show you which is the recent copy. This is it. Cautious optimism, it says, as Africa unveils $3 trillion trading bloc. Devil in the details. Experts say the success of the project will depend on handling of rules of origin and tariffs. It's all about the African Free Continental Trade Area, and you can follow all the details about this also. Some of the kinks that needs to be ironed out as far as shaking it into place is concerned as well. Some countries, of course, are lagging behind, biding their time to see how it really pan out. But all that is tucked away on page 4 and 6 of the East African this week. Also, EAC struggling to pay staff. State of Affairs blamed on delays and non-remittance of budget support by partner states. And that story continues on page 3 of today's The East African. Lamu call, train now stopped in its tracks. Court says the ECA of Lamu plant was illegal and they're ordering it to be scrapped. Major retailer Choppies hit stormy waters. CEO thrown overboard after saying Mogai should leave. This story is in the business segment of East African this week and is tucked away on page 31 of the East African. All right, let me show you also what we have as editorial cartoons today. What has been drawn by Victor in the Daily Nation, what has been drawn as well by Stano. This is what we have in the Daily Nation today, according to Victor. It's all about the scam, the Kenya Power scam. It's all about the tokens. KPLC customers paying for the sins of fraudsters. And we can see who is crucified there. It is you, Mwananchi. Of course, that is a cross as depicted by Victor, right, borrowed from the Romans, perfected by the Persians. That is a crucifixion. And of course, many of you will be paying for these fraudsters for the stolen tokens through your taxes. This is what has been actually drawn by Victor in today's Daily Nation. Also, we have Stano inside the People Daily, and this is what he's drawn for us. Let's see what he has for us this morning. Yes, and who is fooling who is all about the towing and froing and the doublespeak from government about the state of affairs as far as our staple food is concerned. That is the maize. Who is fooling who? Corn game. There is more than enough corn game, no maize. So who do we believe as far as this is concerned? This is what has been captured absolutely by Stano inside the People Daily today. There we go. All that is in the Daily Nation and the People Daily. Make sure you grab a copy of that. Did I show you what is happening in Uganda? This is the Daily Monitor. Death of a business magnate, 1939-2019. How Amirali built Mukwano, his footprints and property. Billionaire had 4 shots. The daughter taking over. You have full coverage of him on page 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 of today's Daily Monitor. And you can see a related picture here. This is Amirali Karmali, popularly known by his trade name Mukwano, who died on Wednesday. Also, there is a special report, whistleblower exposes corruption at Equal Opportunities Commission. Follow the story on page 15 of today's Daily Monitor. So make sure you grab a copy of the Daily Nation, the Star, the Standard, whichever paper I should say that is really floating your boat. Make sure you actually grab it through, read that as well. This is what is the splash on today's Daily Nation. Now we want to buckle down to a discussion this morning with our panelists, and it's all about the future of media in Kenya. Now we know the values that underpin good journalism, the need of citizens for reliable and abundant information, and the importance of such information for a healthy society and a robust democracy. These are perennial and provide are compass bearing or compass bearings for anyone trying to make sense of current changes across the media landscape. Now, the standards in the profession are in the process of being set. Most of the effects on journalism imposed by new technology are shaped in the most developed societies, but these changes are equally influencing the media in less developed societies as well. Here in the country, we know a lot has happened since we also switched over from analog to the digital platform. And also, when it comes to moral decadence, then how do we also make sure that we have a robust grid, that what is being spewed through the channels, through the mass social media, also it is being regulated. We want to see where we're headed as far as this is concerned. Also, the biggest revenues, which is coming from advertising, has been adversely affecting the platform as well. These are questions that we need to ask. When it comes to regulatory framework, are we prepared also for the future as far as tweaking what we do have legislated as well? These are questions that we need to probe to the experts this morning. And you know the drill as well. You can drive a show with me. Hit me on Twitter. AM Live NTV is a Twitter handle. AM Live NTV is a profile name on Facebook. And 20686 is our SMS portal. So what do you reckon as far as the future of media in Kenya is concerned? Do you think the quality of journalism in the country has really gone down the tubes? And how can we improve that as well? So let's just introduce our guests this morning. Also, they'll be walking over to the lectern to talk to us. Of course, you know every Friday how we do it on the Leadership Forum. I want to introduce to you this morning Engineer Francis Wangusi. If you joined us at the top of the hour, I did that. He is the Director General of Communications Authority of Kenya. Also, we have with us Dr. Wilfred Marube, who is a PRSK President. Of course, we do have also with us David Omyoyo, who is the CEO of Media Council of Kenya. We have with us Dr. Ezekiel Mutua, who is Executive Director and the CEO of Kenya Films Classification Board, and eagerly waiting for Marceline Nyambala, who is the Executive Director of Amwek, to join us this morning. Right, we always accuse that we don't host ladies here. Maybe the media regulator also will actually question this, and I stand to be corrected this morning by David. But we're eagerly waiting for Marceline to join us as well. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us, and I'm really stoked about this discussion because I know this is where the heart of the matter is, and having you here is a great honor because this is projecting where we're headed in this country as far as media is concerned. And I look forward to hearing from you, of course, what you will tell us on the lectern, where I'll give you and afford you maybe 5 and 6 minutes to talk to Kenyans and tell them from your own perspective as far as regulator is concerned, as far as the authorities is concerned, the classification of films board is concerned, when it comes to morality as well. Also publicity, advertising, these are issues that we need to discuss. And when Marceline joins us as well, we shall hear from her where also is a place of women when it comes to the media space in Kenya as well. So let's just open this discussion briefly, and we'll just hear introductory remarks from you just to tell us a snippet of what you think where we're headed as far as this is concerned. Let's just begin with you, Engineer Francis Wangusi. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. Since the digital migration, before we head there, since the digital migration until now, how has been the trajectory? Has it been quick off the mark? Do we still have, kinks that needs to be ironed along the way? Do you think the quality of journalism has gone down? The programming content as well, are we struggling as far as this is concerned? So where are we headed? Very briefly before you head to the lectern.
Well, thank you very much, Inea. Since 2005, when we migrated from analog to digital broadcasting, we have witnessed a growth in landscape for digital TV broadcasting, as well as FM stations as well. I think at the point we migrated, we had only 14 TV stations in Kenya. But today, as we speak, maybe from our latest statistics, we are having 83 free-to-air TV stations on the digital platform.
83.
83. This, so far, as we are concerned, is a great growth, especially looking at it in the spell of just 5 years since we migrated. Of course, together with it, of course, there's been growth in the demand for radio stations to go along with the TV. And so far, I think we have now licensed 130 free-to-air stations to date. Subscription services have emerged. I think before migration, yes, we used to have some subscription services, but largely on cable and satellite. But with the introduction of digital broadcasting, we are now having to see about 8 stations that are giving Kenyans subscription services, which means then that, of course, there is diversity in terms of generation of media income,
yes.
Right, moving also from advertising to now subscription, and other methods, of course, have also come in. I want also to say that so far, in terms of the uptake in local content,
yes.
It has been interesting that with the 83 TV stations, at least right now, 75% of them conform to our baseline local content level of 40%.
40%.
Yeah, so I think to us that is a great improvement. We believe that we are struggling to see that at least by the end of this year, most of the TV stations would have been able to join, the level of the 40% local content. We have witnessed, even in terms of the genre of local content, right from music to even educational programs, to documentaries, to religious programs, that a significant growth is being experienced. In fact, one of the surprising things that we are witnessing is that the greater percentage of the content that is now being put on our media platforms, especially radio and TV, is religious programs, music. Of course, there is no much improvement so far on children programs.
Okay.
And some our suspicion is that this has not moved so fast because now, because of the expansion in the media landscape, we're coming in more players. Many of them now are gearing towards the niche markets.
Thank you.
And I think the children may not be what they consider the niche market, despite the fact that in our programming code, we have emphasized the percentage of hours that is supposed to be broadcast in a week for children programs.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's leave it at that because also of time, I will just allow you also to walk to the lectern just to talk, and then we shall have robust discussions after that, because I think also if you get all the introductory remarks, it will lead on into our time, but thank you for that. So I will just give some of the ground rules as far as running the show is concerned. I have my yellow card and my red card. Right, Harambee Stars is out of the game in AFCON. Well, what a pity. I don't know what teams you subscribe to, but this is not all about football. Then I have my bell as well. This is just to make sure that we keep time on the lectern. So if I raise my yellow card, you have 6 minutes. At least you'll know you are halfway. 3 minutes, I'll raise it just to warn you, yes, you've got 3 more minutes to go. If I raise my red card, then you should be winding up. If you go overboard, I'll just, toll the bell as well for you to now stop speaking on the lectern as well. So your camera is camera 3. You shall be, of course, having a sporting chance to address the nation and just give us the current state of the media. How is it right now? You have your mics with you. You don't have to remove the mics walking on the lectern. There is another mic also there on the lectern. So we expect you to be just comfortable wherever you'll be. And since we have Dr. Ezekiel Mutua, who's the CEO of KFCB, and he's near the lectern, I think it's just convenient for you to just walk over to the lectern and begin this morning. And of course, looking at the current space that we have, and we have Engineer Francis Wangusi telling us, of course, about the local content. Children programming is still, of course, under par. We need to step up the ante. Also, the issue of moral decadence, morality is a big, and I know you are the face or the czar right now of all the police, that is keeping watch on what is on the television as far as morality is concerned. I will allow you now to walk to the lectern this morning and just speak to Kenyans and give us a brief of where we are at as far as the future of Kenya media is concerned. Where are we headed?
Thank you, Debarl, and good morning to my fellow panelists and to Kenya. Which is my camera?
Camera 3.
Camera 3.
Yes.
Okay. First of all, allow me to just indicate I'm the CEO of the Kenya Film Classification Board. Kenya Film Classification Board is the state corporation mandated to regulate film and broadcast content to ensure that what is aired on TV or exhibited in theaters conforms to our culture, moral values, and aspirations. But number two, and most importantly, it protects children from exposure to harmful content. And I think that narrative about child protection goes up to online content to ensure that children are given an opportunity to have the proper moral bearing and to grow up in an environment where they are able to have a sense of right and wrong. And I think this is not just a responsibility of regulation. But let me say that in respect to the state of the media today and the work that we do, like I've said, the work of the media since time immemorial has been to be the custodian of the public interest. I think there cannot be any progressive society without a free and independent media. And that we know is a fact of life, that the development is more faster, it is more appreciated in an environment where the media is free, where journalists are able to publish their stories, and where they can be able to analyze and put in context the developments that are taking place in the nation. I think the media has been called the fourth estate. And if you know the genesis of that story, or that term, the fourth estate, which was coined by Edmund Burke during the time when French was going through a major crisis. And a meeting was called for the first estate, the second estate, the third estate. These were commoners, these were the clergy, these were the politicians, and even now what came to be called the fourth estate. And Edmund Burke, looking at the press gallery, said, yonder sits the fourth estate, and the greatest of them all. And since that time, the media has been playing a major role as the custodian of public interest, speaking for Wanjiku, analyzing issues, and ensuring that citizens are informed, they're educated, but they're entertained. Now, the question that I raised this morning, and which is, I think is important, and I'm happy we have very relevant panelists who are going to also interject into this, is the role or the place of morality in the work of the media. And how does the media shape the values that our society espouses and that hold dear? I said our work as KFCB is to ensure that content promotes Kenya's culture, moral values, and aspirations. And I think this is a very important role. It's important because the media wields enormous power. The media has power to influence opinions, to shape views on issues, and mobilize citizens to act and behave in certain ways. And this is done through two key ways. One of them is the priming of news, how news is primed, or the place where you place a certain item within the news. And the second one, which is a major key component of how the media shapes opinions, is in the component of framing. So priming in terms of where you place the item, and the framing in terms of how you project the item that you project. Now, during the launch of the state of the Kenya State of Media Landscape, or the Media Landscape Report 2 days ago in Serena, the Minister for ICT raised two fundamental questions. And one of the questions he was asking is, how does the media feed citizens with item number 1 to item number 5 to 6, 7, with negative, murder, gory stories, and expect advertisers to place, their products in between? The question again was, how can the media become part of the national development narrative without just criticizing, but also giving positive indications in terms of how we can grow as a nation? I came here this morning to plead and to say the media has an important role to play. But we have to change the way we do things so that we become servants of the people and we're also held accountable. Somebody asked the question, if the media is the watchdog of society, who watches over the watchdog? And I think when Awagusi could be said to be the one who watches over the watchdog, you could say KFCP does the same. David Omoyo is here from the Media Council, and we have Dr. Marube, who is also here. But I think the essence of the media, in order to perform properly and serve the country, we must also interrogate our moral values as a nation. Nations rise or fall on the basis of their moral values. If we do not set the right moral values for our children, if we do not promote honesty, hard work, and project heroes even in the villages, people are doing good jobs, people are helping society, people are honest and they're earning from the sweat of their brow, and place premium on character as opposed to just popularity who is landing with a chopper. Until we start focusing on those heroes in the villages, in schools, in churches, within even the political class and the corporate sector, until we begin to identify other shapers of news, other news sources, and give them prominence, and take away the cameras from negativity and from inciting politicians, and start to say the concept of success is not just about how much money you have. It's not about how big a house you live in, how many pieces of land you own. Success is when you have character and integrity. And if you can focus on that, that's how the other nations, like the Asian tigers, if you talk about Malaysia, Singapore, and so on, those countries grew because they first of all set a moral foundation. Let me close by saying this. As a country, we have done very well in building the physical infrastructure. But our moral fabric is broken, it has collapsed, and we need to use the media, which is such an important tool for national development, to start shaping views and the moral character and the context of our nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ezekiel Mutua. And of course, silent points have been raised there that we shall be probing in the course of a program, the role of and the place of morality in the media space in the country, and how are we priming our news and framing also the content is another probing question that we should be asking ourselves. Do we change the way we do things? And of course, since we had that migration, then how also are we changing the way we're doing things? So these are some of the issues that we shall be probing and discussing with our panelists this morning, raised by Dr. Ezekiel Mutua. Success is when you have character and integrity, and he says, of course, we have the infrastructure, but the nobility of character is wanting. The moral fiber of the society, which is our country, has collapsed. So how are we going to raise the game on that as well? That is also what we shall be probing. Up next, we want to hear from David Omoyo, who is the CEO of Media Council of Kenya. And we had Dr. Mutua asking then who is going to be watching over, of course, the watchdogs, right? Do we have also a big brother who's watching also on what the media is paying to the public as well, and who is regulating this when it comes to issues of principles and ethics? And this is none other than who is well able to actually tell us that particular platform on morality, ethics when it comes to the practice of journalism in the country. And this is David Omoyo, who is on the lectern right now. So you've got 6 minutes.
Thank you, and thank you, Dr. Mutua. The Media Council of Kenya, established under Article 34, has the mandate to set media standards, monitor and ensure compliance of those standards. And we all know that media is a very critical institution in the welfare and the fabric of a nation. And that is why an entire article in the Constitution is dedicated to the freedom and protection of the media, perhaps the only institution that is protected. And that makes the work of regulation a little tricky, that you don't then just set rules and ask people to follow them, because then we have other articles in the Constitution that talk about protect them, do not interfere with their work and all that. But again, the global practice of journalism, and not PR, as Dr. Maruba will tell us, the work of journalism is to offend and annoy. If media did work here and we moved around clapping for them, then that is not journalism. That is PR, what PRSK and others will do. And I usually say that for me, when I see senior government officials or parliament and other people protesting about the media, I'm happy because then I realize that the media is doing its job. But if we had government clapping for the media and parliament clapping for the media, for me that would be the first red flag of a threat to press freedom. However, having said that, because we opened the airwaves after the multi-party elections, basically and after 2002, we have seen an increase of TVs from 14, as Wangusi said, to more than 83, and an increase of radios to about 130. But if you look at the repeater stations across, there are about more than 183 broadcasting sites across. And that is good because there is then plurality of voices and all that. However, we have a challenge of the quality of journalism. In this country, we have 5,000 accredited journalists, but more than double that number are pretending to be journalists. We have a crisis of the transition of MCs and comedians and all others into the media space, and they are enjoying the protection bestowed upon journalists by the Constitution, yet these people don't want them to abide by the rules of journalism. And that is where we have the challenge, where people who have either good personalities, good preachers, or good MCs in the village have then gotten into vernacular radios and all that. What we have to ensure is make sure that if you are going to come into this privileged space, then you abide by the rules. If you're going to get into a football pitch, you are protected, but then there are rules to be followed. The issue of moral decadence and all that is about what journalism has done, and these are few isolated cases. Take advantage of the protection that you have by the Constitution, hide behind certain masks, and make pronouncements that are generally unacceptable. We have seen now very popular journalists, especially guys in broadcast and in vernacular, making pronouncements, hurling insults and epithets at each other, and when you ask them, they say, you know, it's the freedom of the media. And that is really an issue that has to be dealt with, and we are dealing with that decisively, making sure that anybody who has access to the national privilege of a public free-to-air media, then you abide by certain rules. There is a lot of talk generally about media not being patriotic and putting in a lot of sad news. Apart from the general definition that the role of journalism is to annoy and offend, a basic definition of news is that it disrupts life. So if, for example, all of us went from here and planted trees, then we called the editor of The Nation and say, all of us went and planted trees and it was not news. The basic question would be, if we planted trees, did we disrupt the normal flow of life? Because something breaking news, it means that a normal the normal flow of life has been interrupted by a certain event, maybe good or bad. So the whole idea of we go and plant 2 trees and say, oh, the media is only concerned because there was a fire, is because a fire can disrupt life and planting a tree down the road may not. However, journalists still have a role to highlight issues that are relevant to human life. You rang the bell.
No. Accidentally. Continue.
Yes. And that is matters education, matters healthcare, and matters general development, including agriculture, the whole debate about maize, farmers saying they have maize and others. Now, the role now and the biggest challenge we have is the quality of journalism. Kenya is reeling and literally collapsing under the weight of episodic journalism. He said, she said, he reported, they have replied. So, and eventually, 100 stories later, 30 headlines, or maybe up to 60 days later, nobody knows what are the facts. Like, for example, if we have people saying there is maize and others saying there isn't, you can't sit in Nairobi and keep reporting that. Go out and look for the maize. So that it's an entire collapse, so that we have a lot of this personality journalism, too much headlines and no facts. And so while we have more outlets and more people practicing this trade, we need to see a few good ones isolate themselves and do quality work. I want to mention one of our colleagues, Africa Check, which does fact-checking about what goes on in the media. And they have, you realize that when they run down, they find that most of the pronouncements by leaders, most of them are false because they just facts were drawn up and down. I would say that it's the duty of the journalists and the editors to go and check these facts. If we keep running with stories blindly, we know that for more than 20 years, the world has been told that Kibera is the largest slum. We just discovered that Kibera is not near being the largest slum around, but it was part of a propaganda so that strategic people can get funding and all that. So I think the challenge facing journalism in this country is quality and ensuring that the public interest is balanced against all other factors that come in.
Right. Thank you, David. I think you've raised some salient points there that needs to be probed. Media not being patriotic. Also, the quality of journalism is one thing. Why is that? You talked of episodic journalism, the he said, she said syndrome that now has crept into the newsrooms as well, personality journalism. And of course, now that we have the plurality of voices with the digital migration as well, is that the fact that is contributing maybe to the quality of journalism in the country as well? The work of media is also to offend and of course to inform as well. Transition of MCs and comedians into the journalism space, how has that really happened? And when we talk about citizen journalism, is that also maybe another space that where they are accommodated and they can use that, of course, and say everyone has a right now because the space has been opened. Right, we continue with the conversation apace, and we want to hear right now also, when it comes to public relations, where do they actually fit in the continuum of the media space as well? And this is where we want to invite over to the lectern as well, Dr. Wilfred Marube, to tell us more, who is the president of the Public Relations Society of Kenya, to just walk over and tell us, where do you fit in when we're talking about publicity? This is all about public relations. All right, I'll just come and fix your... Just walk over to the lectern. I think your mic has fallen off, but we'll use that mic if it's switched on. Maybe my director can advise me, can walk over. Right, you can just continue with that mic on the lectern so that we can continue in the interest of time as well, Dr. Marube. So you have 6 minutes, beginning now, sir.
Okay, thank you, Debarl. Good morning, my colleague panelists. Good morning, viewers. I represent the Public Relations Society of Kenya, and this is a professional body that is responsible for setting standards of the public relations and communication management industry in Kenya. We comprise 3,000 registered members, and there are probably about half of the same number who are not registered. But before I get into the gist of this discussion, I wish to address and respond to some of the misconceptions which are within the industry. I would start with a response to the comments made by my colleague, Umoyo.
I knew it.
Yes, that's for that. In terms of pleasing and entertaining and making people happy, I leave that to the PR professionals. And I wish to clarify that's not the job of PR professionals. Public relations is the strategic use of communication to help organizations meet their strategic objectives through ethical communication. So with that clarity, then I can assure the audience that the misconceptions about PR, about pleasing people, about spinning, about deception, is basically in the realm of propaganda. Public relations is not propaganda. Having said that, for us, we look at the media landscape from a very interesting perspective. The three panelists who are here today are regulators. Public relations industry represents the users of the media landscape. We are the users of the media. We use media. We are subjects of the media industry. Sometimes we become victims of the media industry because of the nature of the organizations we represent. But most importantly, we are the majority content producers. If you happen to open the newspaper today, most of the content, probably about 70 to 80%, is an input from the public relations and communication management industry. So I believe, Debarl, I'm able to demonstrate the connection that Public Relations Society of Kenya find the media space very important, and which is a common ground between journalists and the practitioners, because we are the producers and the users of the primary content. And we see the media as mediating between us, that is organizations, and the audiences. So basically media for us is the space which enables us to interact with the audiences. So I believe I've been able to demonstrate that. And probably what is important for us is to look at the trend in the media industry in respect to the Kenyan Media Landscape Report that was released the other day. And there's another report which was released in 2018, which also shows the entertainment and media industry, that is by the PwC. And what we can see is that media as a platform for reaching out to majority, by this I mean the mainstream media, is basically declining, is losing control. Though we can see that there's the growth of radio, growth of TV, and you can see there's a decline of the newspaper readership, but you can see that internet and social media is becoming a main player, and it's disrupting the nature of the media landscape, which means for us from a public relations perspective, then we are seeing that it's much more difficult to reach out to targeted audiences because the audiences are becoming much more segmented or desegmented, so to speak, so that instead of using the traditional broadcasting model, we're now moving towards narrowcasting. So that despite the growth of the TV stations, despite the growth of the radio stations, it's now much more difficult to reach the audiences that you want because these audiences can't be found in one segment. They can't be found in one media houses. So for me, that is something very key. The other thing that I also find that is very relevant is that the advertising spend is declining. Organizations are increasingly finding it difficult to find and allocate resources to advertise on what they do and their products. But what is important and what is significant for us in the public relations industry is a model which we popularly call the PESO model. PESO model where the P stands for the paid, the E stands for the earned, the S stands for the shared, and the O stands for the owned. So we are seeing more focus towards the earned media. That means earned reporting on organizational activities through news items. Then you're talking about shared. What can be shared on online platforms? That is Twitter, that is Facebook, that is Instagram. Then you're talking about the owned. So we are seeing organizations increasingly becoming their own news outlets through their own platforms. We're talking about websites, we're talking about Twitter handles, we're talking about the Facebook pages. I think these are the emerging trends. So that at the end of the day, there's much less focus on the paid form, which is advertisement. Because number one, there's no money, and number two is the credibility of the messages that are going out. Because usually audiences are likely to dismiss it as an advertisement. But when the content is basically coming from an owned perspective or earned, then we're talking about the industry. And what is important and also realize is the role of the media in Kenya. And we take this with a lot of keen interest as PRSK and as media, as communication practitioners. We know that the media has performed two of its roles very well. If we know that theoretically we talk about the four main roles of the media, that is media monitoring and reporting what is happening, facilitating dialogue, holding those in positions and with power accountable, but most important, collaborating with state agencies and other organizations on public interest. We could say that media in Kenya has played the two roles very, very well. And we believe that media needs probably to be more facilitative, give the voice to partners like PRSK and government, so they're able to articulate their issues and their voices. So I think from us, our perspective is that there should be more focus on the earned media, that is reporting, more focus on owned media, that is from digital platforms, because digital communication is the future because of the segmented audiences. Thank you, Debarl.
All right, thank you very much, Wilfred Maruba there, the president of PRSK. And of course, he's done what he could do best, and that is PR. Talk about, of course, the society. And of course, he's given us a snippet as well, largely on ethical communication and the advertising spend, which is a decline. And it's very critical when it comes to, looking at other sources of revenues and, of course, revenue streams for the media houses now since we have this expanded space. And also, he's talked about the PESO model that he was going to elucidate for us on the other side of a break. Digital space also. How is it also shaping the makeup of the newsroom? That is another question that we need to pose to a panelist. When we circle back, we shall hear from Engineer Francis Wangosi, who will just give us maybe an update. Since now we migrated, how is it, where are we headed? The quality of journalism also has been raised by the regulator, and has the digital space contributed also to the quality of journalism in the country? Even the programming, the content that we're struggling also to put on air as well. We have the infrastructure, I should say, but do we have the relevant programming and the content to carry on with the new infrastructure? We take a short break right now. Please don't go away. When we circle back, we continue with more on the other side of a break.
Civil servants, if you need a loan, call Mwananchi Credit today. Utapatiwa loan within 6 hours.
Do not get stuck when you can get quick approvals within 6 hours. Mwananchi Credit, investor in people.
Jumia Anniversary Sale is live now. Get a 32-inch smart TV at 13,999 and Huawei Wi-Fi Prime 32GB at only 9,999. Sherekea nasi till the 14th of July. Jumia, the online shop you can trust.
An investment in knowledge pays the best interest.
Ours is an all-round approach to education, focusing on the spiritual, the intellectual, attitudes and skills. Our students are all-rounded.
Hi, welcome to AIU.
For more information on our programs, log on to www.aiu.ac.ke. info@aiu.ac.ke.
The Wicked Edition. A blind man and his wife were arrested in Kinangop by angry villagers for peddling bang. Walikuwa wanauza bangi. What is that? In his defense, the blind man told police officers, afade mimi sijawahi ona bangi maisha yangu yote. Utafilaje vibaya about kukua na wase wanashuku uko na pesa?
They treat you very different. Unaona nikiwa nimevaa hivi wase wafikiri niko na do, lakini nikivaa suti kama wase wafikiri niko na do. So mimi enjoy na kuvaa tu official.
Uko na do?
Sina, ni kweli.
Harambee Stars iko juu 254 iko juu.
Gigwip, 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 gigwip. Nasikia kwenu nyinyi ni wachafu mpaka sabuni na maji na sengenya.
Now this is a really easy recipe. This one looks good enough for you.
It's so tasty and crunchy. Did you like it?
I loved it.
Soil Merchants Property Developers have an incredible offer for prime 1/8-acre plots in all Kalau Township. Welcome to our open day on 13th of July 2019. SMS plot to 21595.
You represent the interest of the kingdom of God, of the King of Kings, of the Lord of Lords. So you go and speak on my behalf.
That the Lord is good. Oh,
God wants to use us as instruments in his hand so that the many who are in bondage and slavery can be set free.
Oh, feed the Lord. All you say, he'll give you everything. He'll give you everything.
Welcome back. You're watching the Leadership Forum here on AM Live. We continue with the conversation apace, looking at the future of the media in Kenya, where we headed, and of course, what has been up the collective sleeves of the regulators as far as preparing us for the future as well. A lot has been raised by our panelists from the other side of the break, and of course we've taken salient points, and I know you have done so as well. And we shall be sharing also your contribution and your questions on social media and paper them or paper the papered questions that you've actually advanced to our panelists also shall be put on the table as well. So right now we have the engineer, Francis Wangusi, who is Director General of Communications Authority of Kenya, just to give us a snippet of where we are since the digital migration. Sir, you have 6 minutes beginning now.
Thank you very much. I know the Communications Authority of Kenya was in the midst of the migration from analog to digital broadcasting. So far, I want to say on the positive side, we have witnessed a number of outcomes that are promising, that media is not all that very bad, despite the challenges, some of which that have been raised here. I would want to say, without repeating myself, that so far in terms of subscriptions to the Kenyan media, consuming that content that we hardly regulate, we are having 5.3 million subscribers, up from 3.6 just in 2006. So this is a phenomenal growth, and we do expect that more and more are going to come on board with the conventional receivers of TV broadcasts. Notwithstanding, I want to say that in terms of monitoring of content, we do monitor content. And in fact, as a priority before we give you a license, we want to know what content you are going to broadcast. And each time we do the monitoring. We do monitoring quarterly, and we have statistical reports that give what so far comes out of our media platforms. And as I said earlier, we have seen that there are certain genre of content that is primarily not improving very much. One of them I raised was the children's programming. Comedies could be also in that space. They have the lowest content across most of the monitored stations. However, in terms of the quality of programming on digital migration, I tend to think that the quality of programming depends on the innovation of the TV stations. One of the things that we have emphasized is the need for local content, because we want the Kenyans to consume our own content, which I think in the future is going to improve in terms of jobs in the programming industry, also in terms of promoting our own culture and values. One of the challenges that we have encountered here with the broadcasters is that it's too expensive to produce the local content. And most of the young broadcasters that have come on the digital platform find it a little bit expensive, but we are looking for various ways of enabling them also to be able to give us local content in all the stations. Imagine today we have quite a number of vernacular stations thanks to digital migration, and most of what is spoken, said, and entertained there mostly is local. Other than the news and other negative aspects that have been voiced by our friends, we tend to think that that is one area that the promotion of local content has done very well. But monitoring whether or not they are within the space of our programming guidelines sometimes becomes a challenge, because we have not had a mechanism in place that can be able to digress across or to view across all the maybe 42 languages in the country. What is the future of Kenyan media? I think that is an important thing that our friends have talked about. But I must say that the future of the Kenyan media is going to depend on innovation. The conventional media alone, as has been analyzed by our friend from PRS, actually is declining. But there are many other platforms of delivery of this content which media can also be able to involve themselves in to upgrade their competitive spirit with those international new digital platforms that have come into the country. User-generated content has increased because most of our new platforms are encouraging user-generated contents. All these small platforms, Google, WhatsApp, and so on and so forth, they're encouraging user-generated content. Even conventional media, especially radio, is doing that. So how then are we going to improve the quality of journalism with the user-generated content? Is there an approach we need to give, and especially my friend Omoyo, on how this, because we can't kill it. It is inevitable, we can't kill it, but we need to improve it so that it is on the standard of the quality of journalism that we get from the conventional media. Other than that, I think there are many other things that we are going to discuss maybe on the stage in terms of media, and I don't want to prolong this because I will go a little more technical, and you know, I'm with my friends who are journalists. They will go deeper into the content. All right. and tell us how it is performing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Engineer. That is Engineer Francis Wangusi, who is Director General of Communications Authority of Kenya. Lastly, we want to hear from Marceline Nyambala. She is Executive Director of AMWIC. Of course, we also allow her to walk to the podium. Maybe my director just may pick her before she walks in front of my camera. Right? Yes, you can just walk over now to the lectern over there and speak to the audience. You have 5 minutes, Marceline. I think I should brief you because we're not here when we're briefing our other panelists as well. 6 minutes, I should say. I have my yellow card and my red card just to warn you on the time. If you go overboard, I'll ring my bell. So this is just to tell you midway, and this is we should be finalizing. So you can talk to Kenyans, especially on the space of women when it comes to the future of the media in Kenya.
Okay. Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity. As you have said, my name is Marceline Nyambala from the Association of Media Women in Kenya. AMWIC is all about improving the representation of women at two levels, at the level of women journalists and also at the level of giving a voice to women issues. AMWIC was started in 1983, just before the big international women's conference that was to take place in Nairobi. And it was found that the women were not together, and neither were their issues being highlighted. And so a number of women and, of course, a number of men came together. And so over the years, we looked at the statistics. Women were lacking in the spaces, in the newspapers, their voices as sources of news, but also when we went to the ground at the community level, in terms of consumption patterns, and I'm glad we are analyzing how people use access to after digital migration, we found that many women, of course, because of their roles in society, were not consuming media at the equal levels with the males. So some of the things that we have done over the years is we set up a scholarship fund, which took back 26 women journalists back to schools. A number of our colleagues here and very many people have supported us in this initiative. And they were able to build knowledge and get the education. But over the years, we found that the knowledge was not enough. A lot of mentorship was required so that women could actually be more engaged. Because you found that even today, editorial boards do not have adequate representation of women. This still remains a challenge, and I think your statistics also. We have an improvement for all the years that we have done advocacy, and I want to recognize a number of women, Dorothy Kweyu, Rosemary Okello, Pamela Mburia, Rose Lukalo. There are a number of front runners that have been key in the advocacy work that has taken place. So now we have colleagues like Pamela Sitoni. So you have an improvement. You have a level of improvement at the middle management level, but a lot more work needs to be done in order for us to have a pipeline of women who are joining, and this includes at recruitment level and even from basics like the internships. It needs to be deliberate and intentional to ensure that we have a pipeline of women who can be part of the leadership that we have in our media houses. Now, going into the community level, we found that literacy levels, English, the way we use it, and I'm glad that there is a task force by Macaulay that is looking at consumption pattern and even how government is generating this information. Not very many Kenyans are left out, and this perpetuates inequality. You find that even opportunities that are advertised, we have advertising in newspapers, and what are the access levels of the newspapers in our society? So it will be imperative for us to look at how much of the information and opportunities are reaching the communities. We need to gather statistics and access and to see that are we, the media, part of perpetuating inequality by the ways in which we disseminate information? Which other models? For us as AMWIC, we devised the community radio listening groups, whereby we also used vernacular. We would, because our members are in different radio stations, and we are able to package programs where we find literacy levels and Kiswahili cannot be used. We have been able to use local languages, and people sit as a community, even under the tree, using local resources, and we've been able to disseminate a lot of information in the area of advocacy. We are also engaged a lot with the women in business, and when we're talking about business models, what is the future of sustaining media? I think there's a huge proportion. Yesterday, we were in Her Excellency Gracia Machel when a competition for women in business was being launched, just to scale women's participation in economic empowerment so that more job creation can take place. And our feeling is that there is a segment that has been left, and that perhaps we may need innovative designs that can improve how some of these SMEs can be given products that perhaps they're able to engage. And so that's a conversation we are willing to engage with very many people, that in the area there is an opportunity around women. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, that is, thank you very much. That is Nyambala Marceline, who is Executive Director of AMWIC. And we want now to buckle down to the discussion we've had from all our panelists, and I know I can see your rush of tweets coming through. We shall also be asking some of the questions that I've seen over there, and we shall pose them to our panelists this morning. But let's just begin from where we started this morning about the morality and content, and this was handled by Dr. Ezekiel Mutua. What is the role and the place of morality in the media space, and where we are headed as a country? Because we've had a mass, culture being, spewed through media mediums recently. Of course, not just withstanding what is happening on the social media, also on the traditional media as well. There is sort of a bar that has gone down as far as content that is being spewed, and this is something that the Kenya Films Classification Board has taken special umbrage with. And we just allow you also, Dr. Ezekiel Mutua, to tell us, because we've seen you being feisty and fighting these, especially when it comes to Watershed. But some of them say some of the content is not really, that, I should say, risque or raunchy as you perceive it. It can really fly. So what is all about the Watershed and this content that you feel that is a bit risque and very raunchy, that cannot actually be spewed within that Watershed period?
Thank you, Debarl. Like you've correctly said, the media has a role in promoting the culture and morality of a nation.
Yes.
It's at the very center of that conversation. If it is the custodian of public interest, then morality must be seen as one of the critical components of growth. Mm-hmm. And because even when you look at the war against corruption, you cannot win the war on corruption just by arresting people. Until we build a mosaic that really conforms to morality, where I take pride in being honest, hardworking, and just being content with the little that I have, as opposed to projecting images of people whose wealth is questionable, celebrities whose morality is questionable on TV and giving them more time as opposed to a professor or some student who has an innovation or some guy in the village who is doing a good work. I think that conversation needs to be in terms of where is the balance. While we agree there are a lot of bad things that happen, across society, we cannot give prominence to what is destroying us. And even when we do it, we must do it in context, and that's what we do. Kenya Film Classification Board rates and classifies content in context. So context is in terms of where are you placing that program, how is it rated, who is the target consumer or audience, and therefore is it suitable for that kind of age. That's why you see we are putting general exhibition to say this is good, PG, parental guidance, and so on and so forth, just to ensure that we guide the viewers. But let me put it this way. There is content that is for adults, but there is content that should be for children and therefore cannot be accessed during the watershed. I mean, should not have adult elements during the watershed period. If you look at the concept of watershed, it's actually to ensure that every program or content exhibited during that period is suitable for family viewing. And why is that important? We want to enjoy TV experience when we are seated with our families. And we also want to see things that project the good in humanity and within Kenyans, that show good character. But when you are seated there with your kids and there's bad content and you are embarrassed to watch during the day, I think we are going against the tenets of journalism and the principle of watershed period.
But in the spirit of promoting maybe the Kenyan culture, we have other parts of this country that are still maybe, so to speak, lagging behind, in terms, or lack of a better word, because we have maybe from the northern frontiers, we take Turkana as well, we still have women who are working.
Exactly, that's why I talked about context.
This is culture still, and if you have that during the day, how will you say, are we now not really promoting culture?
No,
Because
that
they
will not
believe
be,
that.
yes. The classifiable elements,
yes.
Debarl, when we are classifying, we look at nudity, obscenity, vile language, violence, or incitement to violence, horror, occultism, and so on and so forth. Those are the classifiable elements. And then we look at the intensity and the frequency of those classifiable elements in a program to determine now how do we rate. So that if it is too much, there's too much, let me give you an example of a film that we banned called Otto the Bloodbath. And you would see a lot of programs that still have some probably blood spewing or some weapons being, blandished on TV. But when the intensity of the blood, for example, if it's just a drop of blood in a film or some bit of, classifiable element just in a flash, that will not be as when you see a human being cut with a panga and blood is spewing, the impact or the frequency and intensity of that classifiable element will determine that we raise it for the out of the watershed. Now, in terms of how we rate in context, if a woman is walking bare-chested in Turkana or in Northern Eastern, breastfeeding their child, even in fact, here in Nairobi, if a woman is expressing a breast because she's breastfeeding, that is not nudity. You can't call that nudity.
But if she's not breastfeeding, because maybe you're using breastfeeding to temper the whole scenario.
We heard about my dress, my choice. So there's an extent in which, seriously, we know there is what is obscene and what is not inappropriate dressing. So if you're bringing, somebody who is dressed inappropriately and putting them on, giving them prominence or projecting them as role models, that's what kids will pick. And that's why the power of the media needs to be derogated in terms of how do you shape even these celebrities and what do you want our children to emulate? If you say beauty is slim and tall or dark and tall or brown, all these things, even about skin bleaching and so on and so forth, there is a power in the media in the sense of what narrative, what goes into the psyche of a child, particularly the impressionable minds. Adults can watch what they want to watch.
Thank you.
Right. And it's not our duty, it's not the duty of the government really to tell a grown-up like Director General here what to watch. But for the children, the watershed period is to ensure that our children get the proper moral bearing and understand, have a sense of right and wrong, and the classifiable elements during the day are not intense and frequent.
All right. Let's hear also from, when you're talking about the moral decadence and the watershed, we have also the quality of journalism that is wanting as well. And you've raised this, David Moy, you want to just also broadly discuss this, because I think this is where details on the quality and the space that we have now. There's so much quantity, but the quality is going down. So, but what are some of the matrices that we use to gauge quality, especially when it comes to journalism?
I mean, it is scientific, but it is basic science. For example, a story or a news story must be factual and accurate and must bring all issues to the fore. So when we have an entire big event happening and we all concentrate on sideshows, it becomes extremely offensive. In the Media Observer that came out Monday last week, we do that weekly, we took issue with an article published by Capital FM, I will mention because we're a regulator.
Yes.
It happened at the DP's home where he was signing a big MOU and against FGM with UNFPA and all that. And it was a big ceremony attended by international media and all that. But the only thing Capital FM said was that DP Ruto has refused to speak about assassination. They did not mention the MOU about FGM around and the money that is being put in and all that. So we realize now that is irresponsible and sensational journalism. You have been invited to an event. You have this big MOU being signed. We have women organizations and several governors from across the country about campaigns they're going to do across the country. You ask a question, well, what are you about? Then he says, no comment about that. And that is all you run without mentioning that. So this matters why they are scientific, because we use a specific way through our monitoring. You just see cases where you wonder, this is not journalism now. Because now this is the news that the journalist wanted to take place, not what happened. Because we call journalists reporters, isn't it? Report what took place. So don't write what you wanted. So I think this guy left the newsroom knowing that we are going to get a comment about this. So the source doesn't do that and a lot else happens. And the guy says, now I will say this has not happened. So continuously, then you get people banding facts and figures that you check and find that they are false.
But what if we can say that was a developing story, and you want to put tails on, the personality journalism that you're talking about?
Yes.
You have a story that has been doing rounds in media, and we want to get the reaction because we've not gotten the reaction from him. So isn't it also within the remit of a journalist to actually pick up the story he wants, right? Maybe that is a FGM story, but I want to follow this particular story on a build-up of what has been there.
I hold the very, very high regard that nobody should dictate to editors what to run, all right? That editors we have trusted them to decide what goes on air. But I think we have now extremities where you take advantage of that freedom that you have, and we have an event happening, you ignore it and try to run what is in your head. You have been called to an event, a news source has something happens, you totally ignore that. You can mention it afterwards, isn't it? And that is the same thing that happens. We have my grandfather's funeral in the village and a few politicians come and everything is live and you give maybe 10 minutes at prime time. You don't even mention where these people were. You just say someone has said this and another one replied and all that. I do not think that is responsible journalism. It's simply sensationalism because you are not even giving context to what is happening. It's actually what I said, forget about the episodes and contextualize, isn't it? When we have an event happening in a village, sometimes it's a project being launched that is relevant around, and you simply concentrate on what two politicians told each other. So what we're having is that because of that challenge to sell, people are trying to sell, generate garbage in the name of journalism. And I have no problem. We have a lot of pages for showbiz. Today is Friday in the papers here. We have a lot of stuff for that across TVs and radio and all that.
Yes.
We are saying that please, for journalism, just do journalism and forget everything else. I want to refer to something else we did at The Observer about a month ago. And it was targeting TVs. We said specifically, give us news and then do other stuff. If you market a 9 p.m. prime time news slot, isn't it? Give us hard news, 9 p.m. Don't say it's news time at 9 p.m. and then we see nothing except a bit of showbiz, people walking up and down, and the bulletin is over. So we are saying there is space for all that, showbiz and all that, isn't it? But if you have marketed something for news and all that, don't bring us some naked people dancing at 9 p.m. in the name of hard news and all that. Those people have their time on the TV. But be honest to your audience. If people are switching on their TVs at 9 to watch news, they don't want to see a dance troupe So what we are saying that there's a little, while it's discretionary mandate given to media houses and editors, we are continuously abusing that by bringing things where they do not belong. So we are not saying my friend Ezekiel will decide what can be pulled down and all that. We're saying if you are going to sell news, get facts, do your work.
But the media consumption is changing, and that's why maybe we have also these dancers coming, during the prime time, also during the news, when you are talking about hard news, but we have still dancers was trying to spice up, the news content as well. Because these are news patterns, and the consumptions are really changing. People are losing also on the young people, especially the traditional media. We have the digital era right now, which is really affecting. So if we continue going with the same model that we had, the same business model of consumption, that this is traditional media, we must come with, me, I should be in the tie, and have my suit on Friday, just the way it has been over the years. But things have changed. The landscape has changed completely, right?
Yes.
We'll come to you.
Last comment on this is that we are not against innovation and trying to attract audiences. We are simply against the entire dilution of the ecosystem of media work, all right? That the fact that trends are changing, you are not going to say now it is news time, but anyway, let's have a dance troupe. We're saying that it's news time, all right? Remember, media sets the agenda, all right? People know on Saturday morning I will watch either children's program and all that, or Sunday and all that, isn't it? So what we're saying is, if you market these as news, for example, the headline as news, put news there. Then we have pages. I mean, I'm giving examples of today's newspapers, isn't it?
Yes.
We have a lot of showbiz inside there. We have a lot of what will be happening which weekend, where the cinema will be and all that. So our whole idea is you have the journalistic privilege and the media freedom, and you're protected by the Constitution. What we are against is that abuse of all that. Goes back to the debate we've been having about social media and all that, that when you go and see a blogger has put fake news or on social media, on their Twitter or Facebook or any other person,
Thank you.
Immediately you look for the credible news source, right? Immediately I say, now after seeing this, there are about 2 handles I need to see, isn't it? Now what we have seen, I like that there is a bit of attempt to improve, is that the media houses, established media houses, also go and grab the fake news and run with it without verifying. Journalism is about verification. So the whole idea about chasing bloggers and chasing some guys who are using pseudonyms and fake guys across is where now, so the biggest challenge is when now you abandon the sacred duty of verification and providing relevant, digested and verified information.
Thank you.
And trying to just churn out in the name of competition.
We shall come to that, because also with the advent of data journalism, how will it help to, also grapple the issue of fake news as well? And has media also adopted the data journalism, where you have to verify, you have facts, it is all about data. But let's come to the biggest issue, and of which maybe Omoyo will tell us that is maybe affecting also the content. And any of you also can contribute on this. I think this was raised by Dr. Wilfred Marube here. The advertising spend, especially now when you liberalize the market. And we know this was maybe the preserve of free main channels, traditional media, but now the space has been opened, the quality has gone down, revenue has become a critical issue. And that is also dictating also maybe the content that is being spewed on air. But how do we regulate? And where is the interface between the advertising and also the regulator? Because at the end of the day, we're in business. We are not a state corporation. We need to be, of course, accountable to our shareholders. We need to be accountable, of course, to the stakeholders as well. We need to actually make sure that at the end of the day, also they have a value for their money. And that is the reality on the ground. Advertising spend. Let's hear from Marube.
Thank you, Debarl. When it comes to advertising, it's a multi-billion industry. It's estimated to be slightly over 300 billion industry in Kenya. So it's huge. But we've seen a shift from newspaper advert into online and radio advert.
Yes.
And the main challenge is, and I'm looking at it from the perspective that there are 2 issues that are coming out when talking about advertising. We're looking at content, and I think you've raised on the issue of ethics, which also Dr. Ezekiel has raised, and also Moyo on contents, in that we have increased user-generated contents. And I'm seeing that there's need for more of course, we have creativity. It's good to be innovative, but you're looking that there's need to think about how do the producers of this content have a self-regulatory mechanism. And I think we are moving towards an area whereby as organizations, especially in the public relations industry, we need to think about what ethical standards do we adhere to when producing such content. I think that's number one. There's need to have self-regulation in that you have creativity, you have innovation, but think about the ethical standards of content, because we're in the era of fake news, and we cannot run away from morality. Because remember, the media space is a public space. And part of the responsibility of the media is public interest. So there's need for that self-regulation. That's number one. And number two, we're also calling for more innovation from organizations because there are less budgets.
Yes.
So organizations are going to deal with more narrowcasting than broadcasting. So they're going to spend more in a particular segment of the audience. Part of this audience probably will be on Twitter. So you're going to see a lot of diversion of media or advert spend on mainstream media. And we're going to see more spend on targeted platforms in social media. So we're going to see an increase in media spend. That's one of the other, I think, trend that is emerging, in that media houses are under threat. And it's what Engineer Wangusi said, that they have to be innovative. And already we can see the media convergence. We can also already see that media houses are already being active in the media space. So I think probably that's happening, then they're likely to tap into that increasing revenue and increasing spend that's going to find itself in the digital space, because digital space is the future of advertising.
Digital space is the future of advertising. And we just want to open up that particular discussion a bit, and any of you can actually chime in as well. I know at one point also you were the Director of Information in the country, Dr. Ezekiel Mutua. So that is really way up also your remit as well. But when you talk about especially the advertising, because it seems the patterns are changing, not many people are buying spaces also maybe in the newspaper as it were, and I think technology is failing me. We should have also projected what also we had from the recent research on the Kenya media landscape, just to show how also the consumption of the newspaper is going on. If we are headed towards the future and we see the circulation of the papers going down, we've seen other people changing their business models as well. They are actually giving their papers for free. And they normally say the future of the newspaper now, it will be free, paid by the corporate. Right? You will give it free, but the corporate will be paying for it, because they're the buying people. They're the people who are actually buying, the spaces for advertising as well. Are we foreseeing that, yes, in the near future, at some point, our newspaper will be free because the consumption will be online, but now we'll seek the corporate maybe to be paying? And if you're saying the advertising spend will be more, we struggle with that still, because we can't see that happening. I don't know. Let's open it. Yes.
Well, I think that's a very interesting area. First of all, I think the advertising space is not controlled.
It's not controlled. Yes, just continue.
And because it is not controlled, that is where I was finding the issue of self-regulation intriguing, because we have a lot of complaints now coming up from broadcasters that even information being given out on their audience research is sort of cooked. It's not correct information that gives them the status in terms of their audiences.
Yes.
So in other words, in the first place, they're not satisfied with the method through which, they can be apportioned advertisement. But one other important thing that we need to understand is that the value of advertisement in the country is a function of the economy of the country. And if, on the other hand, we are having an expanded media space against the same revenue that we can get from media, then the portion that goes to each media house that is doing free-to-air broadcasting will also diminish. And another factor that is also affecting that is the fact that because there are so many media outlet channels that we have in the country, also the competition in terms of how much I should charge in advertisement for somebody to be attracted to come and advertise on my media house is also decreasing. So that in that case, on the overall, it is going to affect the value that, a media house might be getting right now, as opposed to what they were getting at that time. And as he has rightly said, social media platforms are now coming in to compete and run parallel with the conventional media. And interestingly, they have also started advertising through them.
Yes.
In fact, that is one area that we are finding a little bit challenging, especially in terms of the regulation of media, because these people will not regulate it. Even Dr. Mutua is not going to regulate the content that is there. He won't regulate the content that is on YouTube. As much as we are talking about morality on conventional media, our own people are going to consume that content in YouTube, which means you have not closed them out from accessing the content that we are thinking is not palatable and suitable for the audience here in Kenya. So these are the challenges that probably we need to look at and see how. But otherwise, insofar as the media space in terms of growth is concerned, and I still repeat what I said, it is all about innovation. If you are invaded, also go and invade. But we are not saying go and invade and bring crap in terms of content from those guys in order to attract viewers, but also extend your outlets to other channels other than the conventional channels in order also to tap even those audiences in the diaspora.
But the issue of expense of the local content, that is also what we are struggling with. As much as we'll desire to have good content, local content, the 40% that is stipulated by the authority, how do we support, the wherewithal for the local content?
Debarl, I think like Bwana Wanguzi is saying, it's all about innovation. It's about innovation. People need to be innovative. Every business, not just the media or advertising business, is being challenged every day. It's a cutthroat competition, but you must be innovative. But that innovation must not be outside the bounds of morality. Life is not about money at all costs. If you look at every sector of society, we seem to be just about money. And we seem to be trading our moral values for profit. And I think this is where the challenge is. The moment we begin to reconfigure our moral narrative and say that I am successful if I'm an honest, hardworking guy, I could be living in a slum, but I am respected and I'm known to be honest, and focus on that, I think I should be able to find space within society where I am celebrated. And then number two, on the issue of advertising, I think we need to separate the mainstream media, the real media, and the core business of the media from advertising, because you as well start an advertising agency or go on billboards and so on. But if you want to have content within the newspaper or on TV for advertising, it cannot also be at the expense of morality. It cannot also be innovation that even breaks business ethics. Remember what Mahatma Gandhi talked about, the 7 blunders that will destroy the world.
Yes.
Business without morality, education without character, knowledge without character, and so on and so forth. And I think we need to get back to who are we really and where do we want to go as a society, so that we determine that in this country the fundamental ethos that define who we are as Kenyans are this, that if Mr. Wanguzi leaves his phone here next to Ezekiel Mutua, I will look for him and hand over his phone. And we project that act of me not starting stories of, it wasn't near me, it was near David. And we promote those characters, those kind of showbiz, and then place adverts there. So, who is watching that advert? And I'm very keen to see, and I talked about priming and framing. Priming in terms of where the prominence you give to an issue, and framing and priming and the priming, so that the media must be careful to say, if it is an advert that is targeting or promoting something that is not really good for the watershed, then take it out of the watershed. And that's the issue we had actually with beer. But let me say, Bwana Wanguzi has also touched on something very sensitive, and which is the main problem now going forward, online. That's where the business, digital, the world is going to be digital, media is going to be informed by digital innovations, but he has also given us a challenge. How do we regulate the internet? It's not just a challenge for Kenya. But let me say there's need for interagency collaboration, because Francis will agree with me that there are some jurisdictions where you cannot access some kind of content. I spent the weekend with the schools at the Research Clubs of Africa at the Nairobi Center, and they did research. 11 schools, top schools in Kenya, had done a research about this area of morality and the power of the media and how it is influencing children. Do you know the decision they reached in their recommendations is that we should close certain pornographic sites from accessing this country. Now the question was, is it possible? And this is the challenge now, where the real regulator, the Communications Authority of Kenya, the one who opens the gateway, the one who licenses broadcasters, internet service, providers, can say,
thank you,
if you cannot access this content in the United Arab Emirates, you can't access it in Singapore or China. Where do we want to benchmark with other countries that have opened up their space and destroyed their moral values? Or do we benchmark with what will protect us in the long term?
Litigants will say actually you're infringing on a freedom of expression, of course, and even the consumption of what we want as news as well. That will be another question. But let's hear from, yes, please.
Just to say that the whole issue about digital and advertising, Google, Twitter, YouTube, that conversation is already ongoing globally on their obligation regarding regulation and even shared profits. So it's a conversation that we need to engage on. But let me weigh in also on the whole issue about the sustainability of also media houses.
Yes.
There are already newspapers that are experimenting with paywalls, but paywalls whereby you access content, certain content, and sometimes they're releasing a content. When it is, if it goes viral, they put it on a payment mode. Then now people begin to pay for it.
Yes.
So there are a number of newspapers that are already experimenting with that from the digital format. Traditionally, again, the advertisers supplemented the newspapers. So the newspaper it has never been worth its price. It's the advertisers and the audiences, but now it was a question of how is your readership, or what is your audience, and now this justifies the advertiser coming in place. And so for online, again, of course, it has generated the issue about fake news, that people want tweets because this is where now the money will come through. But weighing also on the morality and of content, the issue, I saw a report that stated that the co-advertisers are now betting companies. And the whole issue about outright deception comes into place, where you find a woman is saying, oh, I am going to give this, I'm now going to, I've won this, and then I'm encouraging you also to come in and bet. Yeah, and you know that I'm typing, I'm going to pay school fees, and this is, and what is the protection of gullible audiences with regard to this? Again, there was another report I saw that at the rural areas, the major advertisers are witch doctors. So again,
witch doctors.
Yeah, witch doctors are the advertisers. So I'm saying the conversation is broader.
It's broader.
It's a broad conversation about the state of economy in this country. And what are the incentives that we need the media houses to engage with the business people. What are their challenges and what are the opportunities? What are the incentives that they're being offered? Can we engage?
All right.
Because we're talking about a nation. How do you destroy a nation?
How do you destroy a nation? Maybe we raise also a broader question, because the issue of vernacular stations as well is very pivotal for this country. And of course, you're talking about liberalization of the media. But before we had the state media, which is KBC, controlling all the vernacular stations. And that was a source of maybe issuing an upper hand in terms of controlling the content that is being spewed to the public. Because if you had people speaking in the vernacular, and saying that it was maybe an analogy or euphemism that I use, it has been misinterpreted, and people are being stalked. Especially, we know the episodic, of course, time that we went through the harrowing torture of the 2007-2008 post-election violence, and that was spewed through vernacular stations as well. Maybe as a regulator, we need to question ourselves, should all these vernacular stations be under the remit of the state media, where we were before? Or are we hacking back also infringing on the people's spaces in terms of owning media ownership as well? That is a critical question that the regulator should tell us, the authority should tell us this morning. And of course, we want also, because of time, not to really focus on those, but also look at what we had Marceline raising about also women and editorial boards. That is a critical issue as well. Very briefly, could we handle this?
Thank you, Inea. I think that is a fundamental question. When we started the liberalization of media, of course, one of the fundamental things that the government put as a policy in place is that KBC should be able to provide local channels in the counties so that then it can be properly accessed. However, KBC's ability to be able to roll out to all those counties was a problem. But in law also, the law allows what we call community broadcasting. And community broadcasting have emerged to be in two forms. The religious stations, as well as now they are being used, if it is not a religious station, is being used as a voice for political interests in particular area where they are. So removing them has become a big problem because we started it. We have seen the challenges that we are facing with them, but then removing them is a big problem. Now we question ourselves. In fact, that is a model we were being challenged on across Africa, how we are going to manage it. But somehow, I think maybe it has more advantages than disadvantages because it reaches somebody right in the right in the, can we say, machinani. So, but what we are seeing right now as an emerging trend is where maybe a vernacular station is spewing hatred, where a vernacular station is showing what the society doesn't like. Society doesn't like themselves. They themselves are reporting. And I think in that case we are able to track down. However, I think the format we have in Kenya in terms of vernacular stations has its cons and pros. In most cases, those who are using the consumers will tell you they have more pros than cons. Then at the level of where we raise it is difficult for us to monitor and exactly within the framework programming of our programming whether they are actually conforming to it. I guess the way political emotion, and social emotion, it is something that can be discussed. Governors wanted the local stations. Yes. Senators are opposing that. MPs are opposing because they think the governor gets hold of that station. His political administration in that particular area. His political administration in that particular area. Will not be with that. For that reason, and for that reason, quite a number of interests.
Thank you. Let's get from Omoy. We'll come to you. Yes, at the time. Number one is I don't know you totally about moving community radios back to the state. That's what we are discussing. You have the freedom, multiplicity, and plurality of voices. Yes, many people are allowed on media houses and get messages. Two issues. Number one, and that's one of the media regulations. Anybody can own a media. The guys in charge of content, programming, and the must be accredited by the council. So when you own a media house, you can own a media house, but the people in charge must be otherwise accredited. Otherwise, we will require our friends to hold the license. Otherwise, we have because the tricky part is a few radios. One of the worst radio stations doing hate speech happening. That was mentioned. This radio was going. It was opened by a bishop. Yes, and then it became a politician. So we see these people as religious leaders and licensed from our brothers here. They become politicians, and because you cannot manage the intrigues around that, will be the guy
government will be the guide in charge of messaging massively. Secondly, is that we have issues of capacity, and we are mobilizing veterans and senior journalists in this country, them across the country, mentor, train, and accompany them put their registrations and TV stations, and we have no body to look out there to kind of show us just people are there, there to do so. They need to finally, on the issue of advertising, I am going to take you back. Fundamental issues with advertising. There is research issues cannot be used advertising. How advertising the methodology has. I was a station manager of a radio in Nakuru. The radio was in Nakuru and targeting the research papers. The research papers, the radio will be compared with the targeting Kiambu and others. You can't bring that research. And after the research that is not, it is fundamental. It must be defined. I know how that is done. I know that the research in this country, cannot be used. Secondly, public spend. Secondly, last week our government is dealing with all media houses. It's not that fair to all that money goes to 4 media houses. We have 150 media houses and 4 big media houses take that is not the right of these guys in media, and we decide to talk. We also talk about diversity and making sure that public spending is then distributed across exercising responsible media and general. Finally, the code of advertising, code of conduct for advertising. We think that advertisers and marketers can do whatever they want. If an advert is going infinitely into the media, it must certainly go because the media you are protecting is public goods are find them. So if you're going to find them, right now it's on our website for public participation. Journalism and talk show hosts and others are regulated to put an advert. If you're going to put an advert for public consumption, that must meet certain standards.
Thank you. For me, I think the issue of content is all about content on social media, online ethical romance. That is not romantic. That's something that is so we're thinking about because we have PRSK, we have determining what is ethical communication. So for us,